Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It's Sunday, January 28th. Got my coffee here. The dog's got little bones are chewing on, making noise. What I thought I'd talk about today is the wealth of information that we lose every time someone passes away. And if we don't take the time to listen to that wealth of information, most often the case it's lost forever. So stay tuned. So welcome back. So what spurred me to think about this is this past week, we lost a fella that had been very influential to me when it came to my business. His name was Gordon, and he passed away at the age of 89. He had a good life, even back when he was in his 70s when I first met him. He told me he had a good run and a good life. And what he had done all of his life was he started off as a mechanic per se, okay? For a lawn and garden business that sold, I think it was Troy-Bilts. I think it was Wheel Horse, and then Wheel Horse bought Troy-Bilt, or vice versa. But he had the MTD line. And he went from that point, doing that for a few years, and then he had the chance to buy the complete dealership. And he said it was one of the best moves he ever did. But he was a people person. He enjoyed talking with people. He loved to listen to people. And he would talk to me, because here's the key, folks, is him and I would sit down for hours and talk. But it was more him talking and me listening. Because he had so much information about how to treat people with honesty, fairness. He was a God-loving, Christian. He went to the Methodist church. We were both Methodist. And I'll tell you, I don't go to church on a regular basis. But Gordon became, when he moved down here, within a couple of years, he was very active in the Methodist church. He enjoyed it. It was a way to be around people. And the man was like my grandfather. He had to be 6'4", maybe. And even in his 70s, late 60s, early 70s, when he moved up, he was still pretty buff, for his age. I used to tell him that and he'd laugh. But he would look at the way we first met was he had a problem with a push mower. And he'd heard about us through the grapevine, in other words, the Methodist church, that I had a repair shop. And he was dying to come see it. So, and he was a mechanic. So, but he brought that lawnmower up. And like 3 hours later, we had the lawnmower running for him within a couple minutes. Because it was something minor. Can't remember if it was, a stuck float, bad gas, something like that. But it wasn't anything he couldn't have figured that out. And I knew that. So I wanted to delve more into what he was interested in. But he was interested in me with my business and how I ran my business. And he was, I want to say, shocked of how much money I was doing online. Because back when I first met Gordon, the bulk of the stuff was pushing towards online, okay? We had our customer base of our usuals for the repair shop, but we weren't focused on repairs and locally. I was more focused on online customer service, on the venues. And he was telling me that he sold his business when he was 68. And he said he sold his business because he had seen so many changes over his lifetime of running his own business, his own shop. And he said back then, when you floor planned, it was a good idea because you had a certain territory. Nobody else was allowed in. And he said there were a few of his customers that had, in the beginning, gone to a different county and bought one from somebody else. But that was prior to him becoming owner of that business. See, he knew people, and he used to tell me that he had a bullshit alert. He could tell when bullshit was coming. He didn't mince his words. I mean, that was one of the things that draws me to people. Is I like honesty, I like frankness. Criticize all you want, And hopefully by the time you're done criticizing, you can show me helpful ways to better myself. But Gordon was a card. Well, he was a good friend and a good mentor. And I can remember him telling me that if you ever run into a situation, Eric, that you're not quite sure of how to handle it, call me. And if you have a problem trying to find a hard to find part, he said, get a hold of me. Because he had what I call, it's a recipe box, okay? And in that recipe box are 4x8 cards. And he's got them alphabetical. And that's, his contacts are in that recipe box. He'll pull the 4x8 card out, and he got the name, phone number, and things that he knew about that individual, whether it was MTD parts, bearings, or what have you. He had written down, and he also written down the wife's name, if they had kids. He made it personal. And I remember him telling me one time, so I'm going to have to go through that, Eric. He said, because I think a lot of them have already passed away. Well, what I guess I'm trying to tell you, is you need to get with these guys and let them tell you their story and how well they did or didn't do. How they learned from their mistakes. See, I believe you're never too old to learn. And in this ever-evolving landscape, if you're not willing to change as well, a lot of times you get kind of put out to pasture where you're no longer relevant in the industry. I mean, just in the last, when I met Gordon, I was in my early 40s, maybe 42. But even in the last 20 years, I have seen so many changes, and most of them aren't good. But he saw in his 38 years of running a business, these changes being made as well, where they were cheapening things, Instead of having quality, the manufacturers started going into quantity, all right, and selling price. But he would tell me, that he knew that when he sold a riding lawnmower to a customer, most of them would easily 20 years later have that same lawnmower and it would still run. But he had the occasional customers that like to update every 4 or 5 years. And he could offer a decent trade-in on their old mowers because they were built to last. And someone that really couldn't afford or didn't really want to buy brand new had that option. How many dealers today are taking in stuff as a trade-in? There is not one dealer within 100 miles of me that is willing to take in even a 5-year-old lawnmower, because most of them are crap. Hate to say it, but even John Deere. But I know one of the things that really stuck with me was he said, you got a good head on your shoulder, Eric. You know people, you're fair with them, you listen, and you try to be fair to everybody. And I told him, about having what I call pro bono customers. And most of them are up in years. Hey, that we do this for. And when I say up in years, from like 75 up. Because I know that good chances are they've only got what their Social Security is anyways. But we do that as a way to give back. And Gordon and I would talk about that. And he said he had a few as well. And he's one of the ones that got me the catchphrase of, if you take care of your community will take care of you. And at first I didn't understand what he was trying to say, because when we first met, I was more into the online side, so I wasn't into my community. I was more into anywhere in the world. And when I say anywhere in the world, we shipped everywhere except communist countries. Other than that, we shipped. But gradually, as the business started to change and we had to go more locally, or let's say I decided we needed to change the business and focus more locally, that I totally understood what he was saying about taking care of your community. And like I say, with the Methodist Church, my wife and I, we would donate money to the Methodist Church for their Thanksgiving turkey drive, they called it. But they would have bags of, with your fixing cans, stuffing, and you actually got a whole bird. And based on the size of your family was how big a bird you got. And some people even just got turkey breasts because that's all they wanted. But we would donate to that cause because I thought it was a really good cause. When it comes to feeding people. So when I say, about finding these people and hooking up with them and listening, they don't have to be in our industry, whether it be in repairs or have you. Just everyday, down-to-earth people. Let them share their story of the trial and tribulations they went through Because a lot of times, if you show the willingness to want to listen, and I've always been that way, I will take time out of my day if I get a chance to just listen to someone tell me about their life. And that was Gordon. Gordon sensed that I was eager to know more. And he made a couple comments once. He said, "You never talk much, Eric." I said, "Why? I'm too busy listening. I'm listening to you and your life." And that's part of the reason that I started with these YouTube videos as well, guys. Is maybe it's a little selfish on my account, but I thought if I could put together some videos, not only for my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids, my great-great-grandkids, but if I can put together some videos of my life, my experiences, my trials and tribulations, my failings, and how I learned to grow, and how I've changed from, that kid that knew everything in his early 20s to a man that's 61 and realizes he knows nothing, is important. And if something were to happen to me today, at least, as of last count, I had like 300 and some videos on YouTube that people could go back and listen to what I had to say, and see if anything resonated with you, and is it being helpful to you? Because I always found that sometimes people, when they're at a certain point, aren't ready to listen. And I've been that way quite a number of times, of where people would try to tell me, the right way of doing things or the right way out, and I was too bullheaded to stop and listen and try to learn from their experiences. But I'm also a person that says, there's certain things that you have to go through in life that you just can't go by what somebody else tells you. You have to personally go through it and fail at it miserably to understand that you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm nowhere near perfect. And I don't strive for perfection. I just strive to be a better person today than I was yesterday. And when it comes to business or going to college or, anything that I want to become better at, I don't compete with other people. I compete with myself. What can I do today that will make myself better than I was yesterday? What are the things that you want to learn while you're still here? Just think about that. See, like with me, now I know, like with Travis, Pete, Amos, even Jason. Because I think Jason's a little younger, kind of like with me. But I would love, even Ed, Steve, James, to be able to sit down and just listen to your life story and what you went through. And I'm hopeful that there are people around you guys that that maybe are family members, friends, that have heard your story. Because if you haven't made your story, then I think it might be time to package it. And maybe, it could be a son or daughter, it could be a grandchild that's up in years, that has the willingness and the eagerness to learn about all the stuff that you went through. I think it's important to pass that down. I understand some people don't want to go back in time and relive any of that. I get it. But if it can be a teachable moment and it would help somebody that's close to you, isn't it worth taking the time out of your day to create a story about yourself? It doesn't have to be really in-depth like Gordon. Gordon went really in-depth, on his when he got married and the kids grew up and selling the business at 68 and moving up here. And I can remember too that he said that he was marrying a young gal out of the cradle. And I had never heard that before. What are you talking about? And he said, well, because at that time he was 75. And I think she was 65. And they enjoy spending time together. But he thought that, marrying somebody 10 years younger than yourself was like, when he was 10, they weren't even born yet. When he was 20, they were only 10 years old. I said, Gordon, you're 75 years old, and she's 65. You both are widowers. If you enjoy each other's company, who cares? But on that note, guys, we need to hear those stories. We need to be able to pass them on and keep them alive. And as long as we keep them alive, those stories alive, then that keeps them around, right? So on that note, you guys have a great Sunday. Hopefully I haven't bored you to death. And the dogs barking and chewing haven't driven you nuts. So on that note, you guys have a great day. If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments. But you guys that are up in years, you need to tell that story. Your story. All right.